live under the narrative that we are in the best moment in history. Abundance of information, access to technology, products of all kinds. But if that is the case, why do so many of us feel empty, displaced, as if something were fundamentally wrong? Walk into a large store and look at a simple cereal aisle. There are dozens of options, with chocolate, sugar-free, organic, diet, for athletes, for children, with fiber or extra protein. The impression being sold is that of a world of choices. But look closer. Who decided that these would be your options? You didn't grow the grains. You didn't design the packaging. You didn't decide on the ingredients. You just choose from what has been carefully planned to look like diversity, but which, deep down, obeys an industrial logic of production and profit. That's not freedom. It's an aesthetic version of prison. The same logic is repeated in every sector. Ready-made paths, safe routes, colorful packaging are offered, and they call it autonomy. But true freedom is not choosing between 30 versions of the same thing. It's being able to question why these versions exist. It's asking whether the game itself is not already rigged. And this is where we need to make a fundamental distinction. The problem is not capitalism. When applied ethically, capitalism is a powerful engine. It stimulates innovation, generates progress, and creates opportunities. But what we have today in many sectors is not that. It is a predatory distortion of the system. These are corporations that masquerade as defenders of the free market while shaping desires, manipulating choices, and exploiting human weaknesses. They pretend to be competitive, but they stifle smaller competitors who try to play fair. There are serious companies that sell the same products without resorting to dirty tricks, and these are constantly crushed by giants who buy influence, dominate algorithms, and control narratives. This happens in technology, food, healthcare, and entertainment. What we see is the centralization of power disguised as plurality. Capitalism in its essence depends on balance, on rules that protect the diversity of ideas and practices. But when this system is captured by structures that place profit above any ethical responsibility, what remains is a theater of freedom. 1,000 products, 1,000 opinions, 1,000 styles, all revolving around the same center of gravity: profitability at any cost. Modern freedom in this context is like a children's menu: colorful, fun, but limited and tame. Yes, you can choose, but only from what has already been allowed. And the most dangerous thing? Believing that you are in control, believing that you are free when all that exists is the carefully packaged illusion of free will. You wake up, check your cell phone, see some motivational phrase. You have the same 24 hours as Elon Musk. Before you even brush your teeth, your body already feels the urgency to get going. Answer emails, meet goals, complete tasks. You barely woke up and you're already late. This is the new servitude. But the whip is not visible. It's called productivity. At some point in recent history, human value ceased to be measured by character or conscience. It became defined by utility, by how much you deliver, by how much you yield. And so, time became currency, silence became waste, and rest became a sin disguised as laziness. But who exactly defined that being productive is the pinnacle of human value? Who implanted the idea that dignity only exists in haste? This is not an innocent cultural deviation. It is a silent and lucrative project. The more insecure we feel, the more we consume solutions, agendas, courses, apps, supplements. We feed the wheel thinking that at some point it will lead us to peace. But peace does not come, because the logic was designed to keep us restless. Again, this is not about demonizing work or capitalism. Work can be a source of meaning. Capitalism, when balanced, offers the freedom to undertake, create, and prosper. But what we see is a distorted system where corporations don't just sell products, they also sell the idea that you are always lacking, always insufficient, always falling short of expectations. And the more we internalize this, the more we voluntarily submit ourselves to an inhumane pace, believing that this is how you win in life. The giants that dominate this landscape don't just follow our routines, they shape them. They offer us methods of productivity while keeping us dependent on the cycle. The algorithm on your phone that distracts you is the same one that sells you the course to help you focus. The same system that makes you emotionally ill profits from your attempt to heal. And what about the companies that don't surrender to this logic? The ones that offer more humane, ethical, sustainable alternatives? They are swallowed up, made invisible, or forced to adapt to the same cold, performative language. Even leisure has been hijacked. Reading for pleasure? Make it useful. Walking aimlessly? Better to record it and turn it into content. Doing nothing? Unacceptable unless it is repackaged as productive meditation. Everything must have a measurable purpose. And if it doesn't, it's disposable, including you. But the truth that no one wants to tell you is simple. You are not a machine. You weren't made to operate without breaks, without downtime, without silence. Nature doesn't bloom all year round. Why should you? The world doesn't need more efficiency. It needs more humanity. And perhaps the greatest act of rebellion today is to simply stop, breathe, refuse to live for performance. Because that's not life. It's simulation. Have you ever stopped to think about who you are when no one is looking? Not the professional, the parent, the friend, not the title on your badge or the biography on your profile, but the being behind all that, the one who existed before the roles, before the jobs, before the performance. That's where the most feared question of modernity takes hold. Who am I without what I do? Because today, more than ever, identity has become a commodity. Every step we take on social media, every outfit we wear, every opinion we share carries a silent message. Look who I am. But this constant display is not pure narcissism. It is survival. It is adaptation to an ecosystem where being seen is being validated, and where disappearing is synonymous with irrelevance. From an early age, we learn to dress up as characters. Good kid, model student, promising professional. Rewarded when we follow the rules, punished when we express something that doesn't fit. And so, little by little, we bury who we are to sustain what others expect us to be. We did not choose these masks. They were handed to us as invisible uniforms, and we became experts at wearing them naturally. The crisis sets in when we realize that these characters, however efficient they may be, do not sustain us inside. We live surrounded by content about authenticity, but immersed in a system that penalizes any deviation. Be yourself has become a marketing slogan, as long as that you fits into desirable, profitable, and visibly palatable standards. This is not your fault. It is a direct effect of a system that has turned subjectivity into capital. When you scroll through social media, you're not just seeing faces. You're seeing identities that have been performed, curated, and edited to sell an image or a product. The line between the self and the avatar has dissolved. The algorithm doesn't care what you feel. It cares what you engage with. And the market doesn't care who you are. It cares if you convert. Big corporations know this. They sell lifestyles, not just products. They sell belonging, status, direction. And the more incomplete you feel, the easier it is to sell you the promise of completeness. In this game, companies that refuse to turn people into targets and identity into packaging are fighting against a system that rewards the artificial and punishes the authentic. But there is a breaking point. It comes in the silence. When you turn off your screens, disconnect from the narratives, and, for a moment, truly listen to yourself. Ask yourself, what would I do if no one was watching? What would still have value if there were no audience? It is in this space that truth begins to breathe. Because your identity is not a brand. It does not need to be published, sold, or optimized. It is a living, complex, indomitable process. And there is no algorithm that can predict a human being who decides to remember themselves. We live surrounded by comforts, the perfect bed, food delivered at the click of a button, entertainment on demand. Nothing against comfort itself. It is a human achievement. But when it becomes the absolute rule rather than the exception, it becomes a prison. And what is more dangerous, a prison that does not hurt, only numbs. A prison that does not impose chains, but offers soft sofas and immediate rewards. The truth is that comfort has become a strategy, not for well-being, but for control. The more comfortable we are, the less willing we are to question. And who benefits from this? The power structures that prefer a complacent people to an awakened people. A satiated population is easier to manipulate. You don't need censorship when you have distraction. You don't need oppression when there are constant rewards. A mind numbed by excess is unlikely to rebel. And this mechanism is not isolated in a conspiracy theory. It is woven into the fabric of the contemporary economy. An economy that calls itself capitalist, but in fact operates through a simulacrum, a theater where corporations pretend to compete while dominating markets, shaping behaviors, and offering personalized experiences that actually standardize everything, including your life. True capitalism, the kind founded on freedom to innovate, decentralized innovation, and legitimate meritocracy, is stifled by this concentrating logic, which turns comfort into a trap and convenience into a social sedative. Companies that don't play this game, that try to offer something honest, more humane, more conscious, are the first to be crushed. They don't sell addiction, they don't manipulate scarcity, they don't know how to camouflage exploitation as efficiency. And in the meantime, we have forgotten how to deal with friction. We reject silence, we avoid effort. We forget that it is in discomfort that growth happens, that it is in friction that new ideas are born, that it is in boredom that creativity flourishes. We prefer the easy path, immediate pleasure, fluidity without reflection. But what seems like ease is actually a path of slow regression. The algorithm knows you prefer what is simple. It adjusts its deliveries so as not to bother you too much. The system knows that the more you enjoy yourself, the less you realize you are being led. And so, life goes by in high definition, but with shallow depth. Choosing discomfort today is almost an act of resistance. Reading something difficult, saying no to what everyone else accepts, questioning what seems obvious. Discomfort brings us back to consciousness, and consciousness brings us back to freedom. Because no truly awake being accepts living packaged like a product, even if that packaging has a comfortable sofa and high-speed internet. There is a kind of silence that is not peace, it is absence. A kind of emptiness that does not scream, it just whispers. And it appears in the intervals, when the episode ends, when the feed ends, when the messages stop. You look at the ceiling and feel, for a moment, an uncomfortable question. Is this it? This life I'm living, is it really mine? It's not an emptiness caused by a lack of things. On the contrary, it appears in the midst of excess content, goals, stimuli. We are always connected, but deeply disconnected from ourselves, from others, from the world as it is outside the screen. This emptiness does not come from scarcity, it comes from saturation, a carefully engineered saturation. The logic is simple. The more distracted you are, the fewer questions you will ask, and the fewer questions you ask, the easier it will be to control your desires, your fears, and your decisions. The system doesn't need to stop you from thinking. It just needs to keep you busy. This is how a culture of consumption is built, replacing meaning with novelty, presence with performance, and depth with momentary social relevance. Added to this is the normalization of absence from oneself. No one teaches us how to be with ourselves. Most of us only know how to exist under the gaze of others. We do, we post, we comment, we react. But for whom and for what purpose? When everything becomes content, even silence needs a caption. It's important to say, this is not an attack on pleasure, technology, or comfort. The problem is not in enjoying what the modern world has to offer. It is in accepting this as enough. It is in believing that well-being is the same as anesthesia. Because there comes a time when comfort becomes a prison and distraction becomes a kind of oblivion. And we forget what is most essential, who we are, what we feel, what truly matters. The cruelest thing is that this emptiness sets in without fanfare. It does not destroy, it dissolves. Little by little, we lose our ability to feel genuine enthusiasm, to be spontaneously curious, to look up at the sky and just contemplate. We lose our internal rhythm because the external one runs us over. And when we realize it, we no longer know where we are, who we are, or why we wake up every day. But all is not lost. This emptiness, however uncomfortable it may be, can be the opening, the crack through which consciousness enters. It calls us back, not with screams, but with subtle discomforts, not with answers, but with forgotten questions. And that is where the reunion begins, in the space between one notification and another, in the second before you hesitate before seeking the next distraction. There lies the beginning of the path, not a path that requires major external revolutions, but small internal acts. Take a deep breath, switch off, listen to the silence, and finally ask yourself honestly, what makes me feel alive, even when no one's watching? From the moment we wake up, we are pulled by invisible commands. Your schedule tells you who you need to be. Your cell phone defines what is important, and the world applauds the version of you that is most useful to it, not necessarily the most authentic. And in this silent process, almost no one notices what is being lost, their very existence. But there is something no one tells you, because it is not profitable to say it. You are not your productivity. You are not your metrics. You are not your track record of achievements. You are something much deeper, a living, complex, sensitive consciousness, a being born to feel, think, create, rest, love, not just to operate, produce, and perform. The way back doesn't require a radical break. It starts with small acts of intimate rebellion, sitting in silence when everything screams for movement, writing, not to impress but to understand yourself, saying no, not because it's efficient, but because it's sincere, and perhaps most revolutionary of all, stopping. Stop running, stop pleasing, stop following. Stop and just be. Get off the stage, close the tabs, turn down the volume of the world until you can hear your own voice. And in that space of listening, you begin to remember. Remember what you truly love, what you fear without shame, what you dream without limits. Because only when you silence the noise of the system do you begin to hear the sound of your soul. And when that happens, when you truly wake up, not just from sleep, but from trance. Something changes. You become dangerous, not with violence, but with lucidity. Dangerous to the systems that profit from your alienation. Dangerous to the narratives that depend on your obedience. Because someone who knows themselves can no longer be molded. They don't seek approval, they choose, they live, and they breathe with authenticity. If this video touched you in any way, write a single word in the comments that sums up how you felt. It could be truth, awakening, rebellion, silence, or anything else that represents this reunion with who you are. That word will be like a sign between us, an intimate commitment to your own consciousness. And if you want to see more content like this, remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It's not just statistics. It's a gesture that strengthens a community of people who are also seeking to get off autopilot. Now, if this work has made sense to you and you believe it deserves to continue existing and expanding, consider leaving a donation of any amount. Your help strengthens this work and allows more content like this to reach more people. Because in a world that wants to turn everything into a commodity, building spaces for free and deep reflection is an act of resistance. You are not alone on this journey. And if you've made it this far, it's because something inside you has already begun to wake up. Welcome back to yourself. We missed you.